Hello, Andrew. You are up next.
Hey Bart, thanks for having me on the show.
How's it going? So where are you playing at? Where are you playing out of, Andrew?
Playing out of Columbus, Ohio. This hand takes place at Shark Tank Poker Club, which is like a $30 seat fee and no rake. They take a promo dollar at 20 and at 40.
The interesting thing about Ohio that I find, because we've gotten some of these membership calls, like Ohio does have regulated casinos too, right? With poker rooms, right? Like in Cincinnati, Cleveland, the Jack, right? Maybe even in Columbus. But then they also have these membership clubs as well.
Yeah, so they've had these clubs for a long time, and there has been a really rich like home game scene. Tommy Angelo came up in the Columbus home games. So when the casinos opened, there was definitely a lot of consolidation with the clubs.
Mm-hmm.
There's like one or two left open in Columbus when there was like eight or something like that before.
So what you're saying is that these clubs were around, then they legalized the casinos, and then some of them still stuck around?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if there's any other state, maybe somebody can help me out, where these clubs exist with regulated poker. Like I don't
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't think of any. I mean, usually you'll find places like this in Texas where there's no casinos. And then, or you have states where there's casinos and they don't have these places. So Columbus might be unique with that. All right. So what's the size of the game here?
It's 1, 2, 8 max, 75% match the stack.
So 1, 2, 8 hand, 8 max, 75% match. Okay. And how deep are you?
The stack sizes vary a lot. I'm 2,200 effective with the main villain. I think I have around 2,500, and one or two players cover me, so very deep. And we're playing with a $5 auto straddle.
But 2,200 with the main villain.
Yes.
Auto straddle from under the gun?
Yes.
All right. Start us off here.
So I'm under the gun. I look left, see Knit Pro and a couple ABC Recs are not interested in the hand, and I peel 4 of clubs, 4 of hearts. This and decide to limp. This is going to be a limp re-raise a lot of the time. I'm limp re-raising a lot of ace-x suited that I can't play for value, a lot of suited gappers, and some offsuit broadways here.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, at least you are saying that you are implementing a limp re-raise bluff range here. So, I mean, the whole thing about this, so there's a straddle pot, you're 8-handed, and you're basically from +1, and you decide to limp with 4-4. You can sometimes even get away with limping just to limp call, or sometimes limp fold small pocket pairs if the table is sort of loose passive enough. Where I throw in, I mean, I so rarely have this, but where I used to, like I always say, like, if you're going to limp re-raise some strong hands, you need to have limp re-raise bluffs too, in the form of having. Usually, it's going to be like ace-x suited. But I will say though, if you have this in your game, Andrew, do you limp re-raise with some big hands then as well?
Honestly, mostly no, unless I have a live tell that someone is going to be ISOing me.
Or
So
somebody's tilting or something like that. Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's the main reason why I include these limp raises, is so that I can play those for a back raise when I get a live tell.
Some people are saying, I mean, the only thing I haven't really thought about, I mean, I suppose you can, the only thing about limp re-raising these types of hands is that if you do get called to a limp re-raise, you're going to be mostly bluffing with almost no equity later on from out of position. I mean, that's a simple fact, as opposed to even like some ace-x suited types of hands where at least you'll have some equity. So, I mean, there's that. Okay, so you limp in here from +1 with pocket fours, okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then folds to the button, who says, "Oh, you just called." And this is exceptional. I'm usually raising in this spot, have a lag image definitely. And he overlimps. He's going to have any 2 cards that he wants to play here. He'll have nearly any 2 suited. He'll have raggy aces, just anything that he wants to see a flop with.
Okay, so he overlimps.
And then the blinds also complete, and the straddle checks.
All right, so small blind, big blind, and straddle call. So you're 5 ways. Is that right?
Yep.
Love me some limped pots. Love me some limped pots. All right, 5 ways. So the pot's like $25. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Then the flop is ace of diamonds, nine of clubs, four of diamonds.
Ace of diamond, nine of clubs, four of diamonds. So you flop bottom set with two diamonds out there, but there's also an ace. That doesn't necessarily mean that someone's not going to have an ace, but what it should mean is that probably somebody does have like ace king, ace queen, or something like that. Some people will play small suited aces. And then, guys, in this particular type of setup, like in a three blind structure, I've seen some really bad preflop play from the first blind, from the small blind. Remember, it's 1-2-5, right? The guy's only in for one. And I see people play hands because they're in for one and complete $4 more with hands that they would never dream of playing in position. But you should be playing way more hands in position than you should be playing out of the small blind. Like a hand like ace three off. Like, why on earth would you ever complete with ace three off when you're in for one in a 1-2-5 structure from the small blind is beyond me. But this is interesting though, because again, you want to do some stuff to build the pot up. It looks to me that like there's only one guy to your left. So even before you tell me what's going on, sometimes you can do things like go for check raises and things like that to build the pot up, but you're sort of in late position. So you might not have that opportunity to do that. Like if it got checked to you, I would bet, because I wouldn't, especially when the button's over limping, like I would just want to start putting some money in the pot. I don't know what's going to happen, but.
Yeah, I agree. And basically, so I bet for 15 into 25.
Okay, so it gets checked to you?
Yes, checks
Okay,
to me.
all right, so check. So check. And hero bets 15. Okay. Now, at this, just something.
Targeting. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, small stakes exploit, absolute pot size is small. I would just bet 25. I know people are going to make fun of me on Reddit saying that that's subtle, but the smaller the pot is, the less it's a percentage of pot thing. I would just bet 20. I would bet 20 or 25. I think it's going to get the same range of calls. But anyways, okay, you bet 15.
Yeah, that's really reasonable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I bet 15. I'm targeting like all of the aces that button would have limped, and any diamond draws, etc. And then the button raises to 60.
Oh, and you're 2200 effective with the button. Is that right? Wow. Okay, so the button raises to 60. Okay. And the blinds fold? The blinds fold?
Yeah, but folds to me.
Okay.
I flat here, thinking.
All right, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Let's go back here. So the button, you bet 15. The button raises to 60. The blinds fold out, and you are heads up with this guy now. And because it's a limp pot, it would seem to me, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it would really seem to me that you have the nuts right now. I can't imagine a scenario here where you don't have the best hand right now. And it doesn't seem to me like a guy would over limp here with 9-9. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
And he's not trapping with there's no crazy.
He's raising 9-9 and ace all day.
Okay, so there's no crazy guy in the straddle like he would ever trap with like ace here, trying to get like the straddle to raise or something like that, right?
No.
So you have the best hand here, like 100% right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, you're so deep here. It's interesting because you unblock an ace. I don't know what this raise necessarily represents. Like if it ever represents like ace 8 or something like that. But I got to tell you, I usually go for the bet 3-bet here, to be perfectly honest with you, and build the pot up here. There's just a lot. It's so few and far between that I actually see a guy raise and then fold a hand for value, unless he was like just purely bluffing. But the thing is that like, even if there's a little bit of a bluff range, and I'm not including diamonds within that, because diamonds are going to call anyways. Like if there's an airball bluff range, if you call and then check call turn, things are going to shut down. I'm not even concerned about the airball bluff range. I want to get as much money in this pot because I'm out of position. If you call and then you naturally check the turn, it can just allow him to check behind. You know what I mean? So that would be my take. Now, people would say, well, how do you balance that with like bluffs or something? I mean, I would probably, if I'd limped in with ace 9, I'd probably 3-bet this too. If I had like ace 9 suited, but I probably wouldn't be from +1. people are like, how do you balance this with bluffs? I mean, it's kind of hard. You might have some two-way draws, maybe not necessarily from +1, because it would be like wheel flush draws that you're probably not playing from +1. But it doesn't overly concern me that much that I don't balance my bluffs here. I just want to get as much money in as the pot as possible. Anyways, that's my take. What did you end up doing?
So I flatted, thinking that he's got a lot of weak ace-x in here. He'll have a lot of just weird stuff, like 3 cards to a straight with 2 clubs, just a bunch of anything. And I think that if I flat here and check to him on the turn, he's going to continue betting with anything that he would have called with. This player absolutely does have a fold button. And I think that if I 3-bet here, then I'm just letting him off the hook with just a lot of his range that I can get some pretty fat value from on later streets.
Well, I mean, listen, your logic is sound then. I mean, I mean, you did a good job defending why you did this. I mean, I'll ask, people will say things that don't make any sense all the time on this show, but that's not here. So what you're saying is that he does have a raise fold button. You don't want him to raise fold if you bet 3-bet, and he might be raising with hands that are just going to fold out, that are just bluffs that will continue on the turn. So you feel like this might be the best way to maximize. I'm assuming that you're going to try to go for a check raise on the turn. I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
I mean, you just got to realize it's going to get checked through some of the time too. All right. So
yeah,
the pot is 145.
Yep.
Okay. All right. What's the turn?
6 of spades on the turn.
That's a pretty bricky brick. No diamond, doesn't bring anything in. Okay.
Yep. And it goes check, check.
All right. So hero checks and the button checks behind very quickly.
Yes. Yeah, just inflow. And at this point, he has all of the raggy aces that I mentioned. He's capped at 1 pair here. He would have continued betting with any flush draws that he raised, any like 9x of diamonds. Probably would have continued betting if he picked up any like backdoor straight draw equity. If this improved him in any way, he'd continue.
So do you think that he just has like a weak ace that he's like pot controlling then, most likely?
Absolutely.
So the button checks behind. Now I know you're making some interesting assumptions here, saying that the draws will always bet off. Maybe they do a lot, but sometimes, because remember, you bet and called, sometimes a draw might take a card behind. Sometimes. I mean, we don't know necessarily always. I tend to agree with you. It's probably like a raggedy ace that's not aces up, right? So the pot remains 145. Okay.
Okay. And then the river is the ace of spades.
Ooh. So before you tell me, all right. So before you tell me what you do, this one's really interesting. It's actually more interesting if he actually checks back some draws. And it brings up a point that I've talked about many times over the years. Sometimes when you make weak trips, now obviously you have a boat, but just follow me with what I'm going to say here. So it's ace of diamonds, 9 of clubs, 4 of diamonds, turns to 6 of spades. And it's a limp pot, right? You bet with bottom set, he raises, you call, turns to 6 of spades. Check, check. Pot's 145. Now the river's the ace of spades. Now there's a couple things here that's going on. So even if a lot of guys at this level they don't have that much of, like, they don't have a high enough bluffing frequency that might be, say, game theory optimal in certain situations, which is why I always advocate like betting your own hand on rivers as opposed to try to pick up bluffs. With one exception, and this is exactly this exception, which is when top pair pairs and you feign weakness, a guy might actually bluff a hand that he wouldn't have bluffed because he wouldn't see anybody like check trips from up front. So a lot of times I'll say, like, in this situation, if I was like, say, in the big blind, right? And it was limped around and I had like ace 3. Okay. And I was in the big blind and I bet the flop because there were 2 diamonds out there. And then I got a call. And then I bet the turn. And then I got a call. And then maybe I was going to be like, all right, well, maybe I'm just going to check a lot of like blank rivers. Now the river's an ace. and I have ace three. When you make weak trips from the blinds in a spot like that where you're betting to get value from draws, the play is to check, because now the guy very well might bet off his bluffs where he wasn't going to bluff, like if the river was like an offsuit deuce or something like that. But now that you check, he wouldn't check trip, so he's going to bluff. Plus, in that example that I'm using with ace three on this board, you still actually might be outkicked. Why am I bringing that into this spot? It's because I actually think that this is the same type of thing, except that I'll check raise pocket fours here, right? Like if you play ace three here in this spot, you're not going to check raise ace three. If you check the river, it's a check call because you still get outkicked. But here with 4-4, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that if he ever has any sliver of diamonds that he actually took a card with, and you check at the end, the fact that you're checking gives him the opportunity to bluff. And then the other thing too is if he has a weak ace and you check, he's going to bet. People aren't going to check back like ace eight here in a spot like that, which is really funny because if you actually take a step back, if he had ace deuce here and he raised the flop and you called and then it went check, check on turn, and now the river is an ace, sometimes the play for him actually should be to check back ace deuce, unless he thinks that like you'll call him with like a 9 or something like that, because you're either going to have a higher ace or you bust it out on a draw. But that doesn't happen. People will just blindly bet trips. So I think in this spot, I think it's a really good situation to actually try to go for a check raise. Now, to play devil's advocate with myself, you could make a case if you were playing against a good player where you could say, well, I'll get more value by just coming out and betting large, because if I check and he check raises, he's capable of bet folding like ace eight, ace five, something like that. I don't see that much at this level, but that's my take. So, all right. So it's ace nine, 4, 6 ace. Okay.
Yeah. And a little bit of history. I've played with this player in much bigger games, and he's a thinking player. He's got some big leaks though. So that was my thought, is that I think that all of his bluffs would have continued bluffing on the turn. So I don't see a lot of incentive to check to give him an opportunity to continue bluffing. And if I go for a check raise, he's going to fold any ace, probably weaker than ace jack.
In reality, though, if that's the case, if you're saying that this guy might bet fold to a check raise with trip aces, then if that's the live node lock, if that's true, then probably the play would be to come out and make a massive overbet here. Some people in the live chat saying bet to induce, that would be the worst play, I think, like in the world. Because like if the guy, well, I guess the caller is saying that he doesn't have any bluffs, but like if the guy somehow arrived with a busted draw, he's not going to bluff raise when Andrew very well can have an ace because he called like the raise on the flop. But I mean, listen, there are certain situations where you can make the case that betting large has more value than going for a check raise because of the fact that a guy is capable of bet folding. The only thing that I would look at though would be like if I was on the button, if he's a thinking player, you don't have much value, you yourself here, Andrew, besides like if you limped in with ace 4 or ace 9, didn't bet 3-bet the flop or pocket fours. I don't think you're limping in with 9-9, but
right.
Yeah. Anyways, okay.
Yeah, ace 4 suited and 4-4 are my only value here. Maybe ace 6 suited if I did continue to the flop raise, but I probably would have just check called that.
So what did you end up doing?
I bet 375.
Okay. So hero bets 375. All right. So you're going over this. And again, I like that if you're going to bet. I think it has to be at least 2x, right?
Yeah.
At least 2x. Because again, the reason why we're doing this is because the caller does not think that this particular villain actually does have a draw. Thinks he almost always has. So again, the reason why this is logical is that the caller thinks that this guy, a lot of this guy's range is trip aces, thinks that the player is capable of bet folding a weak trip aces, but it's probably not going to fold to just an upfront large bet. So if he bets 375, that gets more value than what checking, having the guy bet like 100 and then you go in for like a check raise to like 375 and somehow he folds, right?
Right.
Okay. So you bet 375.
And he thinks for about 10 seconds. Looked like he may have been considering raising. And
That would have been that would be crazy if he all of a sudden raised. That would make no. I don't. How could if he raised now?
I think that he would raise with, like I said, ace jack, anything that he would have continued to a check raise on the turn. I think that he'd at least consider raising here. And
you mean a river check raise? You mean? Wait, I'm confused. I'm confused. You just bet three. You just said that this
right,
guy. You said that this guy was a guy that might be capable of bet folding ace jack. He's not going
right.
to raise a 2.5x river lead with ace jack now at the end, right?
He might.
But he's going to bet fold ace jack to a check raise?
No, I think ace jack, he would have called a check raise. I was saying that any hand that he would have called the check raise with, had I check raised, that he would
Oh, I see.
consider
I got you.
raising.
I understand. I understand. I just that would be such an out. Like if you bet 375 and this guy jammed, I just don't know. Like I don't know if I can fold. I mean, like he's just checking back like aces up after raising. Like he gets there with ace six and checks it back somehow. You know what I mean? It would be
I
like a
have the
crazy
best hand
play.
100% of the time here.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Anyway, that didn't happen, obviously. So you bet 375. Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he thinks for about 10 seconds and then calls. I think I could have gone significantly bigger here. I think I probably could have gone 525 here and also gotten a call.
Did you find out what he had?
He shows the ace of clubs in mucks.
So you okay? So you don't know his kicker. So it's ace x, ace x. So yeah, I mean that's again, it's just one where there are definitely times, and I don't play as much obviously as I used to. When I was playing 4 or 5 days a week, but there are times when it seems to me like you're pretty familiar with this guy, so you can definitely make adjustments based upon player type. So again, if what you are saying is true, your logic was sound. I'm just telling you that if I went into a game where I didn't know the player, I would have played it differently. But I appreciate it. Thanks for the call.